Morning, everyone. Welcome to Handing the Shame Back, my podcast dedicated to survivors of child sexual abuse here in New Zealand and out across the world. For those who are new to the channel, my name's Gloria Masters and I'm your host, and I welcome you. You are so welcome to be here, and hopefully some of what we talk about and share today may be useful information for you. As we know, every survivor story is different. So there's always a trigger warning, and the trigger warning on this is if you start to feel at all triggered, please turn it off. Go to the show notes below where you will be guided to help and resource that may support you. In the meantime, have I got a guest for you? So this is another doctor. Who knew? So meet Dr. Jackie Parsons. She's got a PhD in counselling, education and supervision. She's extremely passionate and is a passionate passionate advocate for people, full stop. But the really interesting thing, guys, is that she's got 7 kids, 2 grandkids, two grandkids and 5 dogs. So welcome to you, the lovely Jackie.
I'm so grateful to be here, and let me apologize. The kids are adults. Most of them are out, but if one bursts in, I'll tell them I love you, get out. And if you hear the dogs barking, I'll tell them to hush or tell them to just beg, please hush up. So thank y'all. And thank you for letting me be a part of this podcast.
You're very welcome. It's really important to me that survivors get their voices heard. And if you are confident enough to be here, then I'm very grateful to be able to host you. So, Jackie, obviously you're a survivor of child sexual abuse. Otherwise you wouldn't be sitting there talking to me. So I guess for our listeners and viewers out there, whatever you're comfortable to share, but would be useful to know.
Okay, well, probably like many of your listeners, and so many survivors, I had a parent that had addiction issues. My mom was a beautiful woman, and but I think with so many survivors and folks that are abused, whether it's emotional, physical, sexual, all the above, it's generational. I just think it's generational. And like so many survivors that have chosen not to go to therapy, and even if they have chosen to go to therapy, often some folks choose to cope or compensate with alcohol and drugs. And unfortunately, my mother, she did both. We called her later on in life a country club drug addict. She didn't buy the drugs on the street. She bought them at CVS or Walmart, and the alcohol at the liquor store, the local grocery store. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So, mom was challenging. I think I like to think she meant well. But like so many folks, alcohol, drugs can be a way of coping, or just, it's almost like the internal noise in your brain. And folks use, self-medicate to quiet the noise or give them courage to do other stuff, which unfortunately means hurting others. There's a great motto or saying my husband told me: hurt people hurt people.
Yep.
So there you go.
And that's unresolved too. But I guess I'm interested as well. I'll come back to the addiction, but what's your history, if you're comfortable to share even a synopsis?
Sure.
So your child sexual abuse, you've suffered that. Who were the perpetrator or perpetrators? How old were you?
Yeah, specifically, it started from a very young age. And like so many survivors, I don't remember everything. I mean, I think the brain can be very, very kind and shut
Yes.
out stuff.
Yes.
But yeah, God love her. And she's dead now. So, and this sounds terrible to say, especially for a mental health clinician, but when she died, there was part of me, loved her, didn't like her, but when I talked to my husband, it's like, my God, the monster's dead.
Yeah.
Because
of course.
she was. But
so this is your mother we're talking about.
Yeah, my mom
Yeah.
that we talked about. Yeah. But
Okay.
I mean, bottom line, she had a really short fuse. I actually found out just a few years ago. Before she had a family, she was actually in nursing school through the Red Cross during World War II. And I'm sorry, okay, a dark humor for me, black humor is sometimes a good thing. So
it's great, bring it on.
We'll scoot up. But she was in nursing school, and about the 9th, 10th month, apparently she'd been charming the doctors and nurses, and they just didn't care for it, which she broke into the narcotics cabinet to take stuff home. So they exited her from the program. She married 2 different men, and didn't like competition. So my father was married previously. He and his wife divorced. He had 4 children from that marriage. When mom and dad married, whatever, she made sure those kids weren't a part of his life because that would take attention off of her. Then I was born. She didn't like competition. I think that's a great way to put it. And so she would belittle me. She would hit me when she would get really, really upset, super drunk. She would take out a gun and threaten to kill me and herself. So I'm fearful of guns. I mean, the Second Amendment in the United States, go for it, but I'm not comfortable with guns because I know what's done. It's interesting. When I was 16 years old, I had come home from school and she was drunk, and I walked in and she was trying to engage me in a fight, and I was like, I just can't do this. I'm going to my room. I was a pretty good student. Hence the PhD or whatever. Yeah. And she got the gun out. Yeah, whatever. Yeah. But she got the gun out and she came in my room and she's like, I'm going to fucking kill you. Then I'm going to fucking kill myself.
Wow.
And I just looked at her and said, go for it. It freaked her out because usually I was like, no, mom, please, please, please. And I was just like, fucking do it. Sorry, you can edit that out. But she never did that again.
Wow.
Now, she did a whole bunch of other crap. But with the sexual abuse, when she would get drunk, now it only occurred that I know of on 3 different occasions. With the sexual abuse, with her perping on me, I would either be asleep on the couch or doing something. And it was when she was drunk. And so she would try to come up behind me and fondle me. Or, I remember one time when I was 12, I was laying on the couch and it was like 2 in the morning. I was watching I was watching Abbott and Costello. I don't know if you know who that is, but just something stupid.
Yes.
And she laid behind me. Clearly, I love animals. I was playing with one of our cats, and she made a comment about cats only with the P word. And then she tried to fondle me. And I was able to get, each time she would try, I'd get up and like, I'm not doing this, and go. It was always when my father wasn't around. So she was a complicated individual.
Well, it sounds like there was sexual, physical, and psychological abuse through your
There was, but
growing up years.
Yeah, and I'll just get into the sex trafficking just real quick because it wasn't that long. It's about 3.5 weeks. We lived in New Orleans initially, and then we moved to Georgia, where she's from. And it was, she and my dad had broken up. And then we went to live with a family member who was a perpetrator, a pedophile. And because he was paying for us to live there and buying her cigarettes and alcohol, he felt entitled to do what he'd done with his kids. And I'm 10 years old, 9 years old. I'm like, what the heck? Because that had never happened. But I did an outcry. I was told that didn't happen. And then I did hear my mom confront the guy a few days later. And he was like, shut the hell up, buying you alcohol and cigarettes. And you got a place to live. So it happened for about 3.5 weeks. I learned some, actually, it's interesting because I used to see folks in the ER, and when I would see pediatrics, with kids, and when folks go in the ER, even for psych issues, for homicidal, suicidal, or psychotic issues, they'll still put them in the traditional hospital gown. But when I would hear a kid screaming, "Don't take off my clothes, please don't touch me," no, no, no. I was like, I would sometimes go in and go, just let me talk to him. Just, and when you see the kids coming in with 10 and 12 or more pairs of underwear, shorts, pants, something's up. Because I did that too.
Yeah. As a protection.
It's a protection. It's a protective, it's a protective move, but it's also a coping mechanism. It's trying to take your power back. So what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And look, thank you so much for your willingness to share. And the reason I ask beautiful survivors like you these questions is because there could be someone out in the audience who has actually gone through something very similar. Right. And so therefore can learn from or may have a light bulb moment through listening to
it's mutual empathy.
Yeah, absolute. But also may actually understand something they hadn't before. So thanks for that, Jackie.
Well, thank you, and thank you for letting me offer this. In fact, I'm actually, thank you for letting me share this. I'm actually the president of it's called the Rotary Club of District 5840 to combat human trafficking. And I don't always, but I try to, at the beginning of each meeting, do what you do, give a trigger warning, because there are some folks that come to the meeting or come to your podcast and listen and have no idea, but something that someone may bring up may strike a chord with them.
Yeah.
So
absolutely. So I think that's really powerful. And so tell us about how life felt for you once you were able to leave home. What were you able to do at that point? What did you do? Tell us a bit about you.
I appreciate you saying that. One of my coping mechanisms when I was growing up, with what was happening to me early on, even with my mom touching me or with what that other individual did, I didn't know what was going on. I knew it just didn't feel good.
Yes.
So I'm a geek. You can see it on my website. I'm just a big old geek. Sorry, I'd like to say otherwise. Well, the writing, blah, 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 whatever. And one of my coping mechanisms, they talk about knowledge is power. Well, information is also safety. So when I was given the opportunity to go to the library or go to the store and buy a book or something, I was up in there. I like candy, but I love words. So I would leave home and go the library or whatever. And, growing up, I played every sport possible. I would have played football had I had the opportunity. I did play powder puff football for, a little bit, but I did everything. I even joined Future Farmers of America. I am not a farmer. I have seen cows. I've had bacon, but yeah, I'm not. But it was just anything to get out of the house because the
Yeah.
house wasn't safe.
Yes.
And I
Absolutely.
I found out. Well, grew up in Georgia. I went to the University of Georgia, and I found out. Well, I was in honors classes, advanced classes, blah blah blah, and I found out that the University of Georgia had an early admissions program for kids um, that could do the work. So let me tell you, I did the work. So I was doing high school and college at the same time, and then I graduated early to get the heck out of there. But like so many folks, home is often, even though it's not safe, it's what you know.
Well, we become familiar and comfortable with it, even though it's hell.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things you
It's
were
the hell
just
that you
saying
know.
before, yeah, is that what you're really talking about, and I think the audience would will cotton on as well. We all use defense mechanisms to try and cope with our trauma. And I
Mm-hmm.
think it sounds like one of yours was to keep as busy as possible, keep as
Oh
distracted
my
as
God.
possible so you didn't have to think.
Right. Well, it was, yeah. Well, I'm grateful that you said that because let me say, I was thinking all the time because the amygdala was just this big. It's like, God, am I going to be attacked here or whatever?
Yeah.
Um, but it's interesting. We talk about kids being ADHD or ADD with the movement, and they see kids, they're like, oh, they're hyper, it's ADHD. It's not always ADHD. Kids often move, especially females, because it's safety. It's anxiety personified in movement. And if you're moving, you can't be caught.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely. I like that anxiety personified in movement. It also, you've also touched on hypervigilance without saying the word, but describing it. So that awareness of what's behind you, what's in front, how many people, where's the exit.
right. Yeah, you could learn. I bet you learned to read a room and tune it. You know, abuse is horrific, but the way we cope, you can learn a lot of things.
Yeah.
How to read folks, um, how to be charming, how to be taking care of others. Just, yeah. And my my dad, my dad's family's was from Italy. Dad was first generation American, and like many fathers or just family members that don't know what to do, they put on blind. You see horses that run, they have on the blinders. Well, that's what Daddy had on. But he knew enough to, um, well, I'm an expert in martial arts. And he made a lot of things available for me without addressing the abuse, except for when she would get drunk and she'd get really angry. He's like, well, go apologize. I was like, for what? Because he just wanted to quiet the monster also. So
Was he aware, do you think, of what was happening to you? Do you think he was aware of the sexual abuse?
I don't, he did hear me one night at 10 say, get your hands off now. And I'm not a violent person, but I got up and pushed her off of me. And he ran into the living room and said, he called me Jack. I don't know why, but it worked. Well, actually, I do know why he called me Jack. Actually, when I was younger, he would say, I want you to know that you're just as smart as a man. So
That
that's
was a
one
real
reason.
compliment, I guess, back
Yeah,
then,
it
was it?
was. It was. Yeah. Yeah, for him it was. Yeah.
Yes.
But
Wow.
yeah, but he told Mom, go get in bed. And he's like, Jackie, just apologize to her in the morning. Jack, just go apologize to her in the morning. I'm just like, really? But that's also had Dad dealt with her because she was abusive to him.
Yeah.
And this guy, I had 15 siblings. Sometimes
Yeah.
just being safe is hard.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. And that you're talking a lot too without realizing it. And for our beautiful audience out there, you'll understand this. With our trauma responses, there's fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. And Jackie, really, I think you've been describing the fawn response, where you take care of everyone, make sure everybody's happy. And of course,
yeah.
what we do is when we're in these situations where fear and danger is present, and for our beautiful audience, we are when we're survivors of child sexual abuse, we are in fear, we are in danger. And so our
Yeah.
trauma responses do kick in. For some of us, for me, I was the queen of fawn. Jackie, it sounds like you had a bit of that. For others of you out there, you may have been in freeze. And we tend to, move between or have more than one at one time. There's many different trauma responses in the way that they manifest. But it's interesting, Jackie, as you're talking, because there's so much of that emerges. So thank you, because it's a really useful thing for our audience to hear.
Well, thank you. And if you don't mind, talking about caregiving and trying to take care of others, it's actually also an element of control. If you're taking care of others and doing what they want, you often know where folks are in the room or what they want or what they need.
Absolutely.
And how to wiggle your way out.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that the responses are designed to protect us. So the fawn response is designed for you second guessing, you preempting, you providing.
You're talking all control.
Yeah. So and clearly being as smart as a man, I'm laughing out loud.
Yeah, thank you, Dad.
So she's now a doctor. So tell us a little bit about how that then evolved for you, because it's no surprise you're doing the work you're doing, Jackie. Tell us about that.
Yeah, shocking. Yeah. Well, thank you. I didn't start off a PhD. And by the way, sometimes it's doctor of philosophy, sometimes it's just piled higher and deeper. It just depends with some folks. But when I got when I went to college, I was initially going to be an attorney. And I eventually married an attorney. I was like, I can fight at home with him. I don't need to go out or whatever. And we divorced eventually. But I worked, and then I went to the University of Georgia, and I got a master's in special ed. And I was an educational therapist. I was in the classroom, and this was in the 80s. I think you were born in 1960, if that's correct. I'm 62, so we are in the same generation. We probably watch Beatles cartoons or whatever. But yeah, it's like, whoop, whoop, there you go. But I was an educational therapist, and I didn't really, here's one of the reasons I was an educational therapist. Trauma, or when you're being abused, you're not always a great student. So I had a learning disability, which actually, God, in the 1970s, Mattel came out with a Barbie that says math is hard. Well, it is. And it's also often hard for females because males tend to have a larger parietal lobe, but you can still eventually do it. But I know when more complex math was being introduced in elementary school, like fractions, or people like, oh, you can do fractions. I'm like, I'd just rather eat the whole damn pie than have to cut it up or figure out the dimensions. But technically I had a learning disability. But when the brain doesn't do certain functions very well, it gives the brain an opportunity to do more things better. So my frontal lobe and prefrontal lobe is pretty big. Clearly I can communicate and talk. I mean, I'd talk to a stop sign or whatever. But the parietal lobe's not always so great with math or being on time, because the parietal lobe is math, time, very specific concrete functions. But I felt I liked working with those that were the underdogs, because I was.
Absolutely.
So, and I did that for a while. And I'd been a debater in college and was still coaching debate. And I did that for a while. I taught in special education classrooms. And because I was a successful debate coach, I also had speech and drama in the afternoons. And then there were several things that happened, but because of my complicated history with my family, even though you may move out of the home from your abuser, abuse still occurs.
Of course it does.
Yeah. And there was some triangulation between my mom and my now ex-husband against me.
Yeah.
And so, well, let's put it this way. My family was in Georgia, and that's why I moved to Texas. To get the heck away from it.
But it's often the way, and there's several things you've raised. So I just want to come back to one of them. With child sexual abuse and childhood trauma, which is quite targeted like this, the brain, part of the brain shuts down. That's just what happens. So it's no surprise that learning or being able to assimilate and process information is impacted. That's just what happens.
I mean, yeah, because you're in protection mode, safety mode. You don't have time for things that
but
don't come naturally.
Yeah. So that's what kind of happens, guys. So we kind of get a whole range of things that occur, and that can be one of them. The other thing is, having, whether we lived at home till we were adults or whether we left home when we were teenagers, if you're a survivor of child sexual abuse, it tends to be that as long as you're in relationship with the people that abused you, there's always going to be that aspect to the relationship. So I'm not surprised that abuse continues whether you're there or you're not, because that's how it was established, and it's almost impossible to break free of that. And if you try and confront the abuser in any way, shape or form, well, we know that won't end well. So, Jackie, I guess, well done for moving away, because it meant you didn't have to stay.
But she did it long distance.
Yeah.
I mean, she would call what we had called Child Protective Services and make up things for them to come investigate us. Nothing ever happened except for it was embarrassing and having to, deal with this.
Who would make stuff up?
My mother. Oh, yeah. Oh, that, thank you for being kind of surprised at that or whatever, or maybe you're not, I don't know. But yeah, that's actually a very common tool abusers use with their parents. And often, when folks are getting a divorce, one side will start blaming the other of child abuse because that's a way to get custody. And that was something my mom was trying to do. She loved my son. And she also knew that I loved my son. And if she could take him, what a great way to hurt me.
Yes. Gotcha.
So, and I divorced and remarried. My mother-in-law, bless her heart, she's passed on also. And in the South, when you say bless her heart, that means, well, never mind. It's not. It's like screw you very much or whatever. Oh.
So, did not know that.
Very genteel or whatever. But yeah, but so bless her heart. Mom and my then mother-in-law, because my husband has a complicated history also, alcoholic mother, and often substance abusers don't care for strong individuals.
Funny that.
Shocking, I know. Or folks that have an understanding of behavior. And guess who, technically is an expert in human behavior. But I eventually went for my PhD in counseling, education, and supervision because I am fascinated. I love working with people, and I love working with people that have been felt powerless. And I love helping folks find their power because we all have it. Sometimes we just give it away.
Yeah.
So,
Or it was taken from us, which makes it really hard for us to ever find any.
well, and you're right.
Yeah.
As kids, it can't be taken away. But when you reach a certain age, hopefully, if you learn about power, um, it's a choice.
Not as a child,
Sometimes,
it's not, Jackie. No.
no,
As,
not. That's why I said
no.
with children, it's
Yeah.
not.
No.
But when you get older, if you learn, and some folks just don't learn, and some folks are just terrified of mental health help. It's not as bad as the stigma as it used to be,
Yeah.
but some folks are terrified. But God, how lucky we are to have the internet. There are support groups out there. There are podcasts out here to listen to, and we're in a Winston Hush. That's the bulldog fussing, but we're in a much better position than we used to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's fantastic the work that you're doing, and love to hear about how that is. Is that like one-to-one work with people? Do you work with groups? How does that? What's your day like?
It's typically individual.
Yeah.
I do couples and family, but my uh, I work primarily with individuals,
Yeah.
and I'm really and guess what? I'm an expert in trauma. Shocking, but yeah, I know. And I'll tell. Can I give you an example of what happened a few days ago with one of my clients?
Of course.
And actually, this has happened a bunch. Often, folks that have been abused don't realize the abuse, or they restory it, or whatever. I had a woman. I can't tell you how many times this has happened with other clients. When she was 4 or 5 years old, she would go over to a family member's house, grandparents, and she's 5, she's hanging out, whatever, and she would go into the bathroom, or this is what it was shared with me. Went into the bathroom, and her grandfather would come in and fondle her. And this was generational. He certainly did with her other sisters, and had done it with her mother, and apparently we're coming to find out now it had been done to him, whatever. But she was telling me this, and what would happen is the grandmother was fully aware of what was going on, and would come beat on the door, yelling. But she wasn't yelling at her husband; she was yelling at her granddaughter. And after the grandfather was through doing what he would do, and she didn't share everything, but she shared as much as her 50-something-year-old mind could about her 5-year-old self. But the grandmother would pick the lock on the door, grab the granddaughter, my client, beat her tail, and send her home, telling her what a little whore she was, or a little slut, and don't come back.
Oh, goodness.
And this was an ongoing thing. Of course, she'd always come back, because I don't know if she understood the intensity of the words, but she always came back. And I mentioned to her, I was like, I'm so sorry. Did anyone ever report him? She's like, for what? And we had to talk about child abuse and child sexual abuse. And she didn't believe me. So, and when folks are in that state, it's just like, thank you for your courage. So the next session, we revisited, and I just asked her, because she has grandkids, and I asked her, earlier in the session, she'd asked, was telling me about her grandson, how wonderful, blah blah blah. They went to Chuck E. Cheese, which is some kids pizza place with animated characters and everything. But I asked her, let's call him Bob. If Bob went over to his other grandparents and his grandmother took him in the bathroom and started fondling him, and she was like, "Oh, that's no! How the hell, you know?" And just kind of sat there, and she looked at me. It's like, "Go ahead and finish," and she couldn't. I was like, "Well, just let me ask you, and you don't have to answer this," because she's in tears at this point. And she said, I asked her, "What's the difference between Bob being sexually abused, but it wasn't sexual abuse with you?" Winston, hush. Sorry, Winston's having issues with this. Winnie, hush. Bulldog. But she burst into tears and she's like, "Oh my God, this is so hard." She's like, she talked about disassociation because, you know, often we disassociate when something's bad going
Of
on.
course, yeah.
And that doesn't mean dissociative identity disorder. We, you know, most of us have some type of dissociative capabilities. I mean, it can't be positive.
No.
I mean, it's not like woohoo, disassociate all the time, but when you're in a bad situation, you know,
Well, it's just your
meditate.
it's your mind
It's a coping
protecting you
Yeah,
from
exactly. It's
what's
a coping
happening.
mechanism.
Yeah.
But I mean, we finally got to the point where I felt, you know, I was like, "Can you help me understand why it was sexual abuse for your grandson, but not for you?" And she was in the fetal position.
Yeah, of
She
course.
probably said it
Yeah.
was. I just couldn't see it.
Yeah.
So, you know, often with folks that we deal with, they've been so conditioned that it's just like, this is what they deserve, this is what's happened. But
Yeah.
when you put it in terms of maybe a friend or someone that they love, the light bulb will come on.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
there
So
you go.
absolutely, it's huge. And so, Jackie, you know, as we're going into the last 10 minutes, I guess I'm
Yeah.
interested in what you're thinking. You know, what are some things that helped you get through? What are some things that our audience might be able to start using for themselves? Any kind of modalities, any particular techniques you used to help you recover and heal from the trauma of this?
Um, it's taken a while, but learning to recognize my own power and knowing that I do have agency over myself, and learning that no one deserves this, including me,
No.
and learning that I can leave it. I can leave this because, you know, I have had a brother. I mean, unfortunately, that committed suicide. Um, you know, there are those that. I mean, I certainly Viva Prosecco, but I don't. I'm not a big drug addict or whatever. But my brother, I mean, well, you know, he had a role model that was an alcoholic, substance abuser. So, and you know, codependency, enabling, whatever. So he lived. Well, there was their acreage. Someone else lived next to them in my brother's home, and often with codependency enabling. My parents in their 70s mortgaged their house so my brother could get a blue. So, but they also had the abusers, substance abusers, dance of mom would get into a fight with my brother and take lots of pills. My brother would come save her, and everything was better. But that's unfortunately how she died. She took a bunch of pills and she stroked out. Um, and about a year later, because my brother didn't have um, the support from my mom, he eventually killed himself because he didn't have the money to do what he wanted. So
I'm really sorry for your
thank
loss.
you.
It's hard.
Thank you. Well, it was interesting. After my mom died, my father was still alive, and it gave me the opportunity to be in relationship with him.
Yeah.
So, you know, opening your for me, it's okay. I love you. Go. I'm on a Zoom call. Go. Okay. Hi. One of my kids is going to be going through here. So anyway, um,
Hi.
for me, it's opening. Yes, I told you this was going to happen. Just saying. Hence the warning with the 7 kids and the dogs. But for me, it's opening yourself up to the possibilities. And there is faith. I do have faith.
Yes.
I'm a cradle Catholic. I'm not a great Catholic by any means, but it's interesting. Prayer is a form of meditation. Sometimes saying the same prayer, it puts you into a meditative state, which can calm down the brain.
Yeah. So when you talked about having agency over yourself and some of what you've managed to discover and that has helped you, was that through therapy? Did you see a therapist, or
There
was it
was some therapy, but
some
that didn't come
therapy?
on
Yeah.
until later.
Yeah.
A lot of it, I don't know if you remember, I'd said, I spent a lot of time in libraries.
Yeah. Yeah.
I read a lot
Yes.
and I observed a lot. And um, observing others allowed me, well, just like my client, uh, I had a best friend, and I had friends, but I had the best friend because that was safe, having someone, the person. Um, but observe, because she had an alcoholic dad also. Observing the substance abuser's dance she experienced allowed me to reflect on what was going on with me. So, but yeah, therapy came.
Yeah.
And, I'm a counselor. Some of my best friends are therapists. So sometimes we have therapeutic conversations going, what? Can you believe blah, blah, blah? So,
Of course. So
yeah.
there's a sense of community as well. So audience,
Mhm.
there's wonderful things. There's discovery through learning and self-learning. There's group work, which is sometimes, as survivors, we've gone through all of this alone, and to actually be able to commune or connect with others out there is really powerful. So I think what Jackie's saying is so useful. And then for Jackie, it's prayer. For others of us, it can be a meditation or some sort of going within. So
I'm really
there's
glad you're
many
saying that.
ways.
Meditation and prayer are the same thing. It's just the focus. So,
Well, it's just an opinion, but I guess the point is, for all of us, there's so many different ways. And Jackie, I guess if you had any words of advice for our audience, is there anything you would like to give them just as we're finishing off today?
well, I'll tell you what I tell clients. Even though I'm a therapist, I don't give advice because when I do, people tend to flip me off in their heads. But I might share some information that might be helpful. I don't know. And whether they choose to take it or not, um, that's okay. Uh, you know, Often folks that have been abused can't stand themselves. There's so much shame. Learning to step back and just look at what you are, or even if you're constantly trying to help folks, um, or doing whatever, you know, I deal with a lot of folks that are exotic dancers that have been in the pornography industry, and thank you for what you've shared in the podcast, or sell themselves, and so often it's coping mechanisms and what they do to survive, and understanding often it's taught, and folks are doing it's survival sex often, and giving themselves a break. So often folks do what they know. So
Yeah, absolutely.
learning to love yourself, or not, people aren't going to immediately love themselves. Learning to like themselves, or learning to give themselves a break. And with shame, there's so much shame often. It's learning if there's stuff that you're super ashamed about, I learning to forgive yourself, not what was done to you, but what, often what's done to us is done to others. The folks who participated in that understand how that cycle occurs. Forgive yourself, learn, and go forward.
Absolutely. And interestingly, and appreciate you bringing it up, from I starred in over 100 pornographic movies, but I was a
Mhm.
child, so this was up to the age of 16. It was
Yeah.
never with my will or consent,
Oh
and
no, it wasn't with consent. Yeah,
never
it was
in my
force.
yeah. So I guess once those years were over, no, not for me. But you know what? You've raised a really valid point, Jackie, because I think for some of our beautiful survivors watching, they have gone into the sex industry, or they have felt that that is what they can do, and felt very unsafe and unaware of what was driving that. And to you beautiful people out there, whatever you needed to do is perfect, because at the point in time that it's right for you, the awareness comes, and
Mhm.
the healing begins. So we love you. Hey, Jackie, look, thank you. I'm just going to
Thank
close out
you.
with our beautiful
Sure.
audience today. So, aren't we lucky, guys? There's several things Jackie said today, that really useful, and I loved in particular. I love the anxiety and motion. That I'm going to use that one. Thank you, Dr. Jackie.
Okay,
Um,
thank you.
I love the agency over self, because that can sometimes be a really difficult thing for us to find when that was taken. So, for
May I
you,
share this with the audience just real quick? If they have questions, they can go to my website. I'll spell it out. It's drjparsons.com, drjparsons.com. If they have questions, please email me.
yep. So, audience and Jackie, just so you know, we always list all your social media handles in the show notes. So
Thank
when
you.
this is out there, they'll all be there for you. So I'll get those off you when you and I chat later.
Sure.
So also, guys, thank you for being part of this. So value who you are, and so believe in everything that you are going through. And I just want you to know, as always, I see you, I stand beside you, and I believe you. And until next time, look after your beautiful selves.